This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.
Namaskar and welcome to Bharat FM. बजेगा भारत तो झूमेगा भारत. Bharat FM is certainly one platform जो कि Indian diaspora based abroad, especially in US का एक favorite radio channel है. Well, जब भारत FM की बात करते हैं तो Indian diaspora की बात करते हैं. And when we talk about Indian diaspora, there's someone very special with us today. A woman who's literally made the NRI diaspora very proud. And today is not International Women's Day, but she is someone who's really gone international. Let's welcome Poonam Gupta, founder of PG Papers. Poonam, welcome to Bharat FM.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for your time. And first of all, we would like to know a little bit brief intro about your growing up years. Like, where did you grow up? And you know, like, how was the journey? And second, how did PG Paper happen? What was the turning point in your life?
So I grew up in Delhi. Basically, I'm born and brought up there, although my grandparents came from 4 states, which I tell everybody quite proudly. And my childhood was amazing. You know, those were the days when kids, played with neighboring children. We were a very big group. I studied initially in the Lady Irwin School, and then I took admission in DPS Mathura Road because I wanted to study commerce, and my all-girls school, which was Lady Irwin, didn't have the option. I had a very wonderful childhood. I have very fond memories of, as especially just throwing your bag once you come from school and then just go and play outside. It was a lot of play outside. It wasn't so much about video games and all. Although they started coming, you remember those small ones which used
True.
to come. I was never really.
Mario was probably one of the favorite video games that everybody has played up during those times.
I think there were some definitely, but it was interesting, but it was never really my thing. So playing outdoors was definitely my thing. I played all sort of sports, cricket, gilli danda, yeah, you name it, and I played it. I guess I took challenge of playing everything. I was also in my school team actually for quite a few sports, including I think Kho. If I remember, I was the captain of the team. So I have long jump, short jump, everything. I was quite sporty growing up. So that was a very good period. Also, I was generally, I would say good at school. I took pride in the fact, although I was never very competitive, I've always had this underlying thing that, one must only ever compete with themselves. Of course, others should inspire you, and you should take inspiration from people who are more successful, whether it's academically or otherwise. But I have this thing where I feel when I see people who are perhaps less privileged than I am, then that is something that gives me the gratitude. I feel gratitude that I am, not in their situation or position. And when I see people who are more successful than I am, that's my learning. That's where I get my learning through observation or just talking to them. And that was, I guess, my personality even as a child. I never really competed with anybody except myself, but somehow always managed to get good grades. I was always kind of top of the class, mostly through my academic journey.
So probably that is something. Did it really prompt you, like your nascent years, that when you moved to Scotland? I mean, there's a story behind that too. If you would like to know about that as well. So, was it something like an inherent factor to always compete with yourself that led to the foundation of PG Papers?
So that came about. See, as a child, when you're growing up, we change our career aspirations multiple times. So when I was a child, it wasn't, I think I was always interested in business because my father is a businessman. And in fact, at that time, he was quite a well-known businessman in our area. So, I was always very curious to hear his conversations, what he was doing. But then, it wasn't really a thing for women then, considering a career in entrepreneurship wasn't really a thing then, if you remember. I'm talking,
Early
in
90s,
early
yes,
1980s,
absolutely.
1990s even.
Yes.
In fact, to the point that the thing used to be that, women don't do so well or, don't get the respect actually as entrepreneurs. Mostly you would see ladies as shopkeepers or, and generally they would somehow come into the business because unfortunately a family mishap. That's what kind of landed them by default, I would say, in business. But I was also a very keen reader. So, I had the same thing. One minute I wanted to be a pilot. Then I thought about becoming a bureaucrat because, people would say bureaucrats have so much respect, which they do, by the way. I have thankfully a lot of friends who are now bureaucrats. So, but, eventually, I think I always kind of settled on the fact that maybe I want to really explore doing my own business. But that didn't seem that that would have been a thing then in India, especially from the community I came from. And then it happened that I got married to an Indian born who is now actually joint CEO of the company, my husband, Puneet Gupta. And when I came over to Scotland, he had already told me that everybody works in Scotland. So that was very good because I did want to work. I had this thing that, I wanted to be financially independent and not by default going into something because of a mishap in the family or something like that. So at that time, I started exploring multiple ideas. My first business was actually not peachy paper. So I started a locum agency, which was placing pharmacists in the NHS here. NHS is like the medical board here, and it's completely under government. And I started making good money in that. But when I came to Scotland, my confidence was a little bit low. New country, new people. I had lost my mother quite quickly at a very young age, which when I moved over here very quickly after my marriage, that hit me hard. So I started doing that business, but somehow the heart wasn't in it, and the confidence to pick up the phone to people and say, by the way, I'm doing this was not there. And deep inside, maybe there was also this thing that I always wanted to do something international. It's a thing in India. We want to
Yeah,
travel. You would hardly ever
absolutely.
meet somebody in India who doesn't want to travel, doesn't want to see the world. I was the same. I wanted to travel. I wanted to see the world. Different cultures really interested me. I already had a friend by that time in multiple countries. Even growing up, we used to have this pen pal things. I used to
Correct.
write to
Yes.
people and wait for the letters to come so I could collect the stamps of their country. That's that
Oh,
kid.
big thing during those days, I would say. Yes.
Yeah, so it was always a think about excited about learning how people do things. So then I started, I used to read a lot, and there was this thing about waste recycling and the government setting up targets, how we are going to achieve it. And I started doing my research actually initially in waste paper and metal scrap. And then I figured out, I managed to connect to some people in India, including some, family contacts. And I started working on this. It took me 10 months of research where I created a portfolio of suppliers and customers, like kind of waiting for the first deal to happen. But I also took that time to learn and bridge my knowledge gaps because I was in a new country. It's a whole different taxation,
True.
how you set up a company. I practically learned everything along the way, and I took every opportunity to learn wherever I could. How does logistics work in export? How does finance move in export? All of these are very important if you have international trade aspirations. So I was kind of doing that learning, and the first deal then finally landed on my desk after a lot of cold calls, a lot of rejected emails saying I don't have anything to sell you. My first deal came along, and I think that gave me the platform and the confidence that I can do this. And the first
And,
then PG was born.
and there has never been a looking back since then. That was 2003, and we are in 2024. But, you know, Poonam, you just described that you do belong to a business family. But during those times, it wasn't something that, a business is something that a woman would pick up. So when you broke this news to your family, especially to your husband, who was already, based in Scotland and who supported the idea of, who already informed you that you need to work here when you move here because every woman is working here. So how, like, what kind of support system was provided by them?
See, in the beginning, when you talk about business, and my husband was actually in a very high, good job. He was earning well, and he had some of his own investments, which he started at a very young age. But when we talk about business, especially a woman talking about business, everybody gets nervous first. They are like, okay, what does it involve? So, my business, I remember my husband said to me at that time, okay, if you want to have a business, you have a 1 year challenge where, you don't need to earn, but you have to start a business with nothing. So I took up that challenge. I said, okay, let me try. And I guess trading kind of, you know, fitted perfectly. Your trading is something you can do without, having initial capital. And I think that's why kind of I thought, okay, waste recycling, there is a case here for exporting to Indian subcontinent and perhaps other countries. So maybe that's why I landed in trade. I kind of stuck to what I believed in, and I did manage to get my first deal just short of 2 months before his deadline. So I was pretty pleased, and I did go and tell him that I've done it, and now I'm going to get lots of repeat deals. And actually, the first 2 years I was working by myself, and he managed to get me a part-time help, who used to work only a couple of hours a week for me. And because I got very, very busy very, very quickly after the first deal. I was always working 20 hours a day, but I was also very excited to work 20 hours a day because I took that as a privilege. You remember, I was never supposed to land in this space, and suddenly I was here. So I was definitely going to make the most of it. And I remember in the first 2 years, I was turning about 2 million pounds, which is equivalent to 20 crores, all by myself. So, and then I was expecting my first child, and I went to my husband and I said, "Look, I know the potential in this business." I said, "I know what I'm doing, but I'm limited to the time I have. I'm one person who's doing everything." Then I kind of started saying that first child is coming along, and it will mean that I have to then divide my time. And I said to him, "Will you?" After my first born, after the first one was born, I requested him. I kind of convinced him to join the business, to say, "I know what I'm doing. I believe I can expand this business. Please come and give it a try." So he did a 6 months trial with me too. He still, like, he was supportive, but he was like, "I don't know what she's talking about." Because I was very private always about what I was doing. Because I used to think that, let me do this best first. And then, so believe it or not, for first 5, 6 years, nobody really knew what I was doing.
Oh,
They just knew that she's working on something and she's doing quite well. She's very busy. She seems happy, but nobody really knew. And I didn't really, I was like so busy just managing with my child and the new business. I got really ill as well very quickly in 2006. I took really unwell, and I was also, I got the news that I was also pregnant with my second child. I was so busy, I didn't even know I was pregnant, which is really
oh,
good. I found out 2, 3 months later. Um, and
that's
then
amazing. I mean, especially coming from a woman, that's just amazing. That really shows how amazingly we have come ahead of times.
But if
You
you
were like,
think about it, you have a new business in which you're working. You have a young child, and I was looking after her. She was just not settling. I tried home help, to try and get her a nanny or something. She was practically attached to me. I used to work with her basically in my lap. She was like, I have this image in my head in old times when ladies used to tie their children
true.
to
Waste,
their bodies,
just
or
tying.
went
Yes,
to war
yeah.
or went to the farm with that. I
Correct.
was that woman who had her child tied to her body, basically working away, because that was the only way I could manage the two things. So where was the time? And plus trying to manage my household. If people who know the Western world and who've had the
Yes.
experience of living here, we do everything by ourselves. Now I'm lucky, I've got some additional help. I didn't know anybody here, so didn't have family support. Like my in-laws were working as well, so as much as they wanted to help, they were limited as to how much
True.
they could do for me. I was pretty hands-on mother, just like I was a hands-on businesswoman. So I'm not complaining that my daughter was attached to me. I wanted it that way, but that meant, you have to kind of sacrifice a lot. You don't have time for yourself. You just don't have
Correct.
time for yourself. And then I told you I got ill as well. Then found out about the second child. I was actually quite critically ill at that time. So I think so much happened so quickly after me moving to Scotland that I just used to feel like I was going 1,000 miles an hour with no time to stop and breathe. In fact, this is a thing even in my company today. When my team speaks to me, they say, "You go 1,000 miles an hour, and we are doing our best to keep up with you. So you can go 2,000 when you're ready for that," which I really appreciate. So I didn't ask for much support. I didn't have even time to ask actually much support. I was just doing things, learning things, as I was going along. I didn't have any other woman in my situation in my family who I could have called and said, how do I manage? Plus, my circumstances were very different. I was the first child who came away from the country. In my whole khandan, I was the first child who came away
Oh,
from the country. So, and living abroad. So they didn't have experience of living abroad. I was just observing, learning, trying to manage things. It wasn't always easy. Well, I'm glad I've done it. Made me very resilient and stronger, I guess.
no wonder, whenever somebody tries to search for you on the net, they really get those inspiring stories. That is so wonderful to know, Poonam. And I was just about to ask you about the kind of taboos that you broke when you became, this internationally successful Indian origin woman. But I think the way you've just elaborated, probably I need to go a little further. And I need to ask you, when you expanded your business, like PG Papers has its presence in India, Sweden, China, so many countries worldwide. So, what are the kind of strategies that you've actually employed, to actually to reach to grow internationally? I would say.
See, when this is one thing, like I always say that if I say I didn't know, it sounds like an excuse, and I don't like giving excuses. I have made it a thing in my life that you'd never, nobody who knows me would never say, "Oh, I couldn't do this because." There is never "I couldn't do this because" in my life, because I take it and I've learned with time that these are excuses we give ourselves. Whatever happened at the right time, was a result of whatever I was putting in. But I'm glad that I was also getting a fair return back, which kind of kept me motivated, if you like. As much as I had multiple failures during my journey, every success, one of which was this morning, it gave me that motivation to do the next best thing. Like, what is that am I going to do next? So, I didn't come from a corporate world. I had seen trading, like my father ran an SME, although he was highly successful businessman, but it wasn't like a corporate company where, there he did have a lot of people working, but it was quite a flat structure, one owner, everybody else is a worker. So, a lot of things I worked. Yes, I had an MBA degree, but but I don't know what I learned there or not. But I guess something good, at least some basics. Like I said, I learned along the way. And initially, my entrepreneurial journey was quite lonely. I didn't have anybody that I could pick up the phone to. I was learning as I was going along, making my mistakes. Every mistake I learned from. There wasn't, I would be lying if they were saying, "Oh, I had this big huge strategy." I didn't have a big huge strategy. I did have a big huge ambition. My initial plan to start a business was to put myself in a job. I wanted to create a job for myself. That's why I started. I wanted to make my own money. That hurdle, once I crossed that, and I knew that I was already at 2 million. At that time, I was purely trading with India. But thankfully, with the contracts I was well executing, I started getting calls from other countries. And I was constantly working on my research and databases as well. And something big happened in 2005 in India, which kind of, gave me that wake up call saying that I am being too comfortable in one market. This is not international business, even though it is kind of. How will I build resilience in my business if I continue to trade in one market? So then I expanded my business to other countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan, in which I also kind of recruited some family help, for some help from here, with logistics. I started building my team. And my next goal was to smash the 10 million target, which I did. So once I did that, then, I knew it's going to be 20 and 50. And there were times in my journey when I got really frustrated because I got stuck. I got stuck for a couple of years in the same space because my company always had, the growth chart was never kind of, like it was literally like a massive growth chart. So that's what I wanted to follow. And every time I got stuck, it frustrated me quite deeply. And then I would, go out and I'd find out what do I need to do differently and what version of me was required to break that barrier. What do I need to do in terms of e-commerce? What do I need to do in terms of HR or hiring people? And then I would take that advice. And but by that time, once I was kind of at 20 million, I had the team in place. And my husband came from corporate background, so his duty used to be always to make sure that um, the back end of the business was well taken care of. Although I did take on two e-commerce projects because I realized that I wanted to, make my processes and exports so easy that it was, you read those books, right? X thing for dummies. So I
Yes.
actually wanted to create an e-commerce platform which even a dummy could operate and not make a mistake. Worked on that. That gave me a huge experience, a good feel as well, although it took away my time from growing my business. I was always at every step putting things in place to ensure that we were ready for the next growth phase. And
That is
now, of
wonderful.
course, we strategize. It's there's all sort of things that happen now. We are quite, we've got good people working for us. We've got a lot of things in place.
Amazing to know, especially your, go get it attitude, or let's like never to give up attitude. That is something just commendable in you, Poonam. And having said that, did the same attitude lead you to, the startup culture that is bubbling all across the globe, not just India? How did you decide that, okay, I do have my own successful business now, but I need to support others, even if it is the form of investment, I need to be a part of the startup culture now. So how did that happen?
See, I love it anyway. I love this environment. I love it anyway. I remember when I started my business for the first 5 years, a company is considered still a startup. I got multiple awards in Scotland. And I think being now part of this ecosystem here, and I've been part of the ecosystem in India also for a very long time. I judge so many awards, and I love, this idea of what is happening out there. Some really amazing things happening out there. One of the programs like Lion's Den is coming out, but an equivalent to that many years ago in the UK was Dragon's Den. Trust me, I used to make
Correct.
sure that I watched every episode. It was just about learning. Remember, that learner in me still wants to
Yes.
know what is going on. And now the world is so actually more dynamic than ever before. Things are moving so fast with this AI and this happening and that happening. And I want to know about everything. I know about robotics. I want to talk about AI. I can talk about agricultural technologies. So I kind of understand that. And if I don't, become part of this, then how will I grow myself, in this space? One of my first investments in India came through a very trusted source, was a company, a fintech company. And, they told me that I was their first investor. It was not a huge investment, it was a small investment, but I have done wonderfully out of that. And then, now I have a much wider network than I had before, trusted network. So when they bring something to me, and I get pitched ideas all the time, from whiskey distilleries to, sending cargo in space, or retail, or so many different fields that I
True.
can talk about. And I love the fact that I'm learning. No, it's that learning is a two-way process.
Correct.
When they're telling me, I like to see their passion. That is very motivating to me as well. And I don't want to miss out on this. I know that I can only learn, run so many businesses myself. But if somebody else is doing something and I believe in them, I also for years have been giving mentoring to businesses, because that is something I kind of struggled with or didn't immediately have available to me. I'm a strong believer in that. So any new startup or growing business which comes to me knocking on my door asking for help, I'll sit down with them, at least give them some of my time. But it also kind of makes me learn, oh wow, people think like that as well. And I've often seen businesses who solve an easy, a problem with ease, or who've solved a problem which exists, generally tend to do very, very well. So I generally tend to call myself more operational than creative. So you can imagine, like, when somebody asks me, what's the name of your company? I was like, PG Paper, because I had to come up with a name fast. So you can see that the creative side. But then my friends often tell me, that's not true, Poonam. You are creative in your own way. I love the fact that, I can take something, and I love to see getting created into something bigger and people benefiting from it. And that's why I want to be part of this journey.
That is so wonderful to know. And Poonam, especially when you said with this sweet smile on your face that, I don't want to miss it. It's like the child inquisitiveness is still there in you. And talking about the show, The Lion's Den, I'm sure it's just buzzing around. So why Lion's Den? What prompted you to be a part of Lion's Den?
The whole idea behind it, the startups coming and pitching themselves and, asking for investments. Again, it's part of learning from both sides. And, it'll also give me a deeper insight as to what's happening in India. Of course, I hear about it all the time. In fact, I have other investments in India too. I've been investing in India since practically the start of my journey in good projects. I guess, it could be a win-win again where I can bring value to these businesses and I'll also see what's happening in India. It's my country. And if I can do what I'm doing there more, it will be a good platform also to do it from. And I guess a program like that goes beyond a room. It's not about talking to an entrepreneur in a sitting in a room, because then it's a conversation between that person and me. A show like Dragon then could be, inspiring millions out there that it is possible to realize their dreams, and it is possible for them to come up with something and go to people who are out there who are willing to provide their support, whether it's in knowledge, through money, mentoring, whatever. See, these programs are not just about money to me. At
Yes.
least that's not what I've seen. It's also about, um, like I said, my entrepreneurial journey was quite lonely. This doesn't have to be like that anymore with so much support around. When they come on the show, they get access to experts, they get access to people on the show who are themselves
Who've been into
successful
their shoes
entrepreneurs.
probably, initial years, who've been into their shoes, who
And
understand what it
also,
really means to stand up.
yes, and also it gives them more confidence, to stand up, and they are practically pitching their product or service, whatever they will come up with. I'm still have to see what ideas come in the den, but they are actually, that's a platform where they're already talking to, oh, I don't know, millions of people who are
Yes,
watching the program, and they might actually, that's a huge
true.
advantage to them. If there's a product which is going to be launched and people are excited about it, they'll wait for that project. They might get a ready market before they even launch. And I'd love to be in that situation again, when to start another business again, where I'm launching a project. I'm always working on multiple projects myself, but that's an idea of being part of the show, and I'm quite excited and looking forward to it.
That's beautiful. And are there any specific industries, like probably, that you would really like to focus upon, that would be of your interest, that you would like to invest in?
See, the buzzing word right now is AI. Let's be
Okay.
honest, that's the buzzing word. But I'd like to, but I am not generally industry specific. I've never been country specific. I will never be industry specific, because again, that working in different industries, that diversification, I quite like it. Some people like to keep their portfolio to a particular industry. That's maybe where their expertise is. But I, thankfully, with the wider network I have people I can go to for IT. I agree, I understand myself. I worked on a project for last 7 8 years, understanding how the industry has evolved or is evolving. So I don't know, I don't have any particular sectors that I would look at. I do like sustainability though. I do like businesses who understand their responsibility towards the society, and they are sustainable and what they are going to do about it. And I would love to see that passion and hunger from the entrepreneurs who are coming to pitch their ideas. At the end of the day, you can have the best idea, but if it is not executed well, it means nothing.
It means nothing. Well, I'm sure your world is full of a lot of things. But having said that, before I let you know go, I really would like to know, you are such a busy woman. You've created such an empire for yourself, and you've literally provided, employment, I'm sure, to so many people around the world. But stress is something that is common, that can happen to anybody at any point of time. So when you work, you have a family front, you have a professional life to manage, and now you are part of this thriving ecosystem where people would be having expectations from you. Do you think stress catches you sometime? And if it does, what's your stress buster? What's your go-to thing to, just be there and relieve yourself? Okay, this is it. So now I'm fresh, and now I can just focus upon once again.
See, every stress catches all of us. It's I always say stress, catches anybody and everybody. Whether sometimes even people who might not be, like a woman who's a housewife, or she can get quite stressful because she might be juggling a lot of things. Stress is part of life. It's about how we will manage that stress. That is more important. So, through my 22 years of entrepreneurial journey, I would focus on that. Or imagine when we were children, did we not have stress when we were giving exams? Ki padh le, we
So
should
much.
get good marks. I can't fail in this, or kuch yaad nahi ho raha. So things like that. So my take on that is it's not about stress, it's about how we manage it. To take a positive attitude towards stress, which I know is easy said than done. So my way of doing that is, one, I have a lot of mental notes for myself. So when I'm stressed, I do like some me time. I cannot, I do not like to socialize that much because I am in my head working on a solution or working on something. I'm working on myself. So, things like meditation or things like talking to people that I trust. I'm maybe, I'm thinking, am I making it bigger than it is in my head? So, talking to people, reaching out to people who can maybe help me just understand it a little bit better if I'm in thick of something, finding solutions, because that will ultimately relieve that stress if it's work related. I tend to kind of more go within, and I need my me time. And if I need a change, then maybe I'll go out, and that going within part is directly related to meditation. It's just, yeah, it's cutting all the noise out. you know Cut all the noise out. First spend time with yourself, bring yourself to a good place. So then, pick up the phone to whoever I need to speak to. And if I don't need to speak to anybody, I don't speak to anybody. I'm actually quite happy generally in my own company, which helps. And plus I have two wonderful daughters.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
when I'm stressed, it is a great stress buster, spending time with them. And once in a while, I can, if somebody recommends a nice movie, whether it's Hollywood or Bollywood, that is one thing that I like to do. Not all the time. Not if I'm extremely stressed, then I cannot even have a visual or watch something. Then I need my me time. I need to go within. I need to figure out what's troubling me, and I need to come out. Breathing exercises help.
Wow. So on that wonderful note, Puram, we are looking forward to see you, roaring on the sets and on the show, The Lions Den. All the very best for you. And we're really looking forward to kind of investments that you would be making. Thank you so much for talking to us, and thanks a lot for your time. Thank you for, being on Bharat FM.
Thank you. Lovely speaking to you. Thank you. And
Thank
see you
you.
guys soon.
See you. Yes.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत.